Now, getting onto one of the big things that's broke recently, which is that reform seemed to have taken a turn for the woke. So people have been calling reform woke for a while. And it does seem to be that ever since a certain prominent character came into the tune of £200,000 or whatever it was, they certainly have seemed to have gone back on a lot of the things which they said they were going to do circa around this time last year. Liam Tufts put on X, responding to Nigel Farage in one instance where he said, what the hell happened to you guys? This time last year, you had the entire country in the palm of your hand. You had the entire country at your feet. What the hell happened? Now, it's been confirmed that at least in some instances, reform policy is to house male prisoners in female prisons. In 2025, nearly in the last quarter of 2025, we've had the What is the Woman film. We've had all of the outrageous protests out in America where all of this lunacy was playing out all throughout the Biden administration. And we were calling it how lunatic-like it was, right? Now, Reform have come out and said, and they're using Dee Willoughby as an example. So Anne Whittaker clarified on GB News, I believe it was on Talk TV, sorry, which I'll play the clip for you after I read this, clarifying remarks that were made by Vanessa Frake, Vanessa Frake, who was recently added to Reform's board. By the way, here is Vanessa Frake, ladies and gentlemen. When we say that maybe they were warning signs, Vanessa Frake is on the right, by the way, in this image I'm about to show you. Maybe they were warning signs with regards to this stuff. Maybe there were some things we could have looked at and, said, why are Reform bringing these people in? So it was Vanessa to initially make the remarks that they would house men in women's prisons, basically. But Anne Whittaker clarifying in this article on GB News titled, "Since the adults have left the room, let me set the record straight on Reform's trans policy." There seems to be some confusion following remarks made in a recent press conference in which Vanessa Frake, an ex-governor, said she thought issues of trans and female prisons and stuff like that should be held on a case-by-case or dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Immediately, and Nigel Farage went on to claim this, that it was in Reform's position. Richard Tice went on to say about it. And instantly I said, well, look, this either makes you look grossly incompetent at best or disgusting liars at worst. Either way, it's not a good look. So the clarification came that to protect women from assault, Reform policy would say that the norm should be that the prisoner should serve the sentence imposed in a prison of the sex that the person was born in, right? So allowing any man who identifies as a woman to be housed among female prisoners poses too great a risk to their safety and therefore is a dereliction of duty on the part of the prison service. For that reason, and especially in light of the recent ruling of the Supreme Court, it is Reform policy to keep such prisoners in male prisons. Now, this is a good start. This is a good start. However, it's not good when when we say that attempt some clarification and then they go on to say some good things and then they say, however, again, doesn't bode well, does it? There is a very small number, or I should say they are a very small number, of trans people who have undergone the whole hog. They have undergone extensive surgery to remove their male genitalia and to create a seemingly female body. They have developed breasts and taken drugs to suppress male hormones and promote female ones. They look and sound exactly like the women they believe they have become, and they may have lived that way for years. We have a duty to ensure their safety too, and beyond all peradventure, they would not be safe in a male prison, but liable to serious sexual assault, including rape. You see where this is going, ladies and gentlemen. They would not, however, pose any threat to women, and it is unlikely that the women would in turn feel threatened. This is not a man in a dress. It is somebody whose body itself has been extensively altered. There are not enough of such prisoners to justify a special unit, and so the choice is between housing such a person in a male prison in solitary confinement for that person's own protection, which is clearly unacceptable for any length of time, or this is the case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read this verbatim. This is not my word. This is not my view. This is me quoting Anne Whittaker verbatim. Housing her in a prison where she will look and feel like the other inmates. this speaks directly to the heart of Reform now. Reform, if this is their position, having been clarified today, this was posted today at time of recording, if this is indicative of their position, they've just said that they believe men can be women, which is possibly the most woke thing you can say nowadays, that men can be women, that all it takes is a bit of makeup, some bottom surgery and potentially some top surgery, some horrific some horrific mutilation processes, which in my opinion should never ever be allowed to be administered anyway, because quite clearly these people are dealing with a mental problem. If a man believes that they're a woman, that is clearly a mental problem. But it says where she will look and feel like the other inmates. So Reform are admitting, or at least Anne Widdecombe is admitting, even if Reform are now saying she doesn't speak for us, but they put her in this position, that they believe a man can be a woman based on the terms that they used. They just described a man as a woman by using the female pronoun, by using the female pronouns. And that's why J.K. Rowling, I believe, went on to say that Reform have gone woke. And I can only imagine now, with how much the resentment is built against the woke stuff, that we're going to be seeing them, I'm hoping so anyway, that we're going to be seeing the membership crashing to the floor very soon. And I say that actually as somebody that is wondering, especially in Wales, what exactly is the alternative going to be. I'm there hoping at the moment, I'm potentially thinking Advance UK is our best bet, and Advance UK Wales is potentially our best bet. Because this is bad. This is bad, because then they said, think India Willoughby, the man masquerading as a woman. Or if you were around then, think Jan Morris. Trans surgery of that order of magnitude is serious stuff. Yeah, it absolutely is serious stuff, and it has massive societal implications, but is coming from mental illness and is the absolute wrong prescription for that mental illness. And the entire ideology needs to be eradicated. Not wishing any harm upon any person when I say that. I'm saying the ideology itself, the ideas themselves need to die. Such people do not want to be men, are no longer driven by male hormones, and do not get excited by the prospect of sex with women. But no, they do get a sexual thrill out of this pretend fantasy and being able to be in the same place as them with their privileges and stuff like that. They get this autogynephilic sexual thrill out of this masquerading act that still does put women in danger. So they can have all the works in the world. There's other tools at your disposal to commit harm against women with. You can commit sexual assault against a woman without ever having actually inserted, your penis into her and raped her in that way, right? There's more than one way to sexually assault somebody. And when they say here, and this is the thing here, and they said that we have a duty to ensure their safety too, beyond all peradventure. They would not be safe in a male prison, but liable to serious sexual assault, including rape. It's not the women's fault that this person denied who they actually were and put themselves in this position via the decisions that they made. Because men, just regular men, who haven't undergone any surgery, who haven't tried to masquerade themselves as women because of mental illness and all of this stuff, are still liable to be raped in a male prison. They're still liable to be raped in a male prison. You hear horror stories of this happening all the time. All the time in prisons. So those men are in danger. Where's their special treatment? Or to protect them, are they all of a sudden going to be able to identify as women and be put in a women's prison for their own safety? Or are you just going to put them in solitary confinement? You said that it's not okay to put them in solitary confinement in one case because you perceive this person as vulnerable, but all men pretty much are not safe in prison from these things because it's prison. It's prison, and they're there for a reason. It's not on the women in their own prison who had nothing to do with this then to accommodate this person, regardless of what mental fantasies they have and all of this stuff, right? Mental fantasies and mental delusions. Ben Habib chipped in the comments and said, if a man chooses to mutilate his own body, that does not turn him into a man, into a woman, he is still a man. To treat him as a woman is an endorsement of transgender ideology. Yeah, it is. It is. It absolutely is. But here's the video, I believe, that's linked to this from Talk TV. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. The video has decided it doesn't want to work a moment. Right, here we go.
Trans women, i.e. men, being held in female jails.
Right, let me try and sort this one out for you, Ian. First of all, reform policy is that we will not routinely house trans women prisoners in women's jails. However, they'll have to stay in men's jails if that was the sex they were born into. However, we would acknowledge, and I think this is what Vanessa had in mind, we would acknowledge that there is a very small portion of trans people who have gone through the whole works. They've had the surgery, they've had the drugs, they have developed ostensibly at any rate, you can't do much about inside, but ostensibly outside a woman's body, they look like women. They may have lived as women for, 9, 10, 11 years. And we would acknowledge that if you put somebody like that, who looks like a woman, into a male prison, that person would be in extreme danger of serious sexual assault. There's no doubt about it. And so we would say that in those cases, we would examine the possibility of housing them in a women's prison. There aren't enough of them to make it worth creating a special unit. So it would have to be one or the other, either male or female. I think that's what...
Very interesting, huh? Apologies about that again, ladies and gentlemen. I had another phone call. I had my dog come up to visit me, so that was lovely. Tell me to stop working because I need to go down and make her fussings. So basically, again, this is the video where you're seeing now that they're making the concession now due to people's mental delusions and due to the decisions that they've made to mutilate their bodies, which nobody else was a part of other than themselves and their doctor and stuff like that. And just again, very sad that they did not... they did not get the sufficient help that they needed to stop them from doing these things and to put them on the right track mentally and physically. That now there's certain concessions that need to be made. But the blanket thing does need to be is just that no men in women's prisons. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And really even going the other way as well. Or I've talked about this before, it's not directly part of the same issue, but it's a related issue. No women in men's prisons either. Not talking about necessarily trans men, quote unquote. Talking about like female prison guards and stuff like that. You can't fizz up female prison guards and stuff like that because it's too often they end up getting caught in, eloping with the prisoners and stuff like that and outright derelicting in their duty. I was talking about derelictions in their duty. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about women in men's prisons, which are driven by the DEI stuff, right? But again, this is very, very, it's sad to see. It is sad to see, but it's not really that unexpected, especially when, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, and you see the rest of the clip, this is who Reform decided to take on this issue. There were signs. There were possibly signs. So it's just another nail in the coffin for Reform, at least in my opinion. And the entire ideology, as I mentioned, the entire ideology needs to be eradicated.